Assalamu alaikum, greetings of peace. My name is Hafsa Siddiqui and I'm your host for YATA Talks. Today in the studio with us is Dr Tabassum who's here to talk to us about hijab and the biases we see about it. So assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, tell me a little bit about yourself and what it is you do.
Okay, so I have a PhD in neuroscience. I was a research doctor by profession. I'm retired now. My full-time passion has become my son and my work as, in Dawah. So I'm a member of the Muslim Debate Initiative, which provides a debate platform to engage with the society at large on issues such as feminism, modernism, and Islam versus comparative religion. I'm also a member of the Street Dawah Toronto team, and we go out on the street level, downtown Toronto. We give out information on Islam, we engage in conversation, and I'm also a volunteer, semi-regular volunteer at our local mosque, the Toronto and Regional Islamic Centre.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you, and today we're talking about hijab, and I see that you have one, I have one. So just really quickly, condensed form, what's the definition of hijab?
Okay, so the hijab is we're responding to a command from God when we put the hijab on, ideally, not responding to a command from any person such as our parents. Ideally, that would be great too. That's encouragement and support towards the right thing. We're not responding to a command from our husband. There's a verse in the Quran which refers to, there were a couple of verses in the Quran which refer to us dressing modestly and covering our adornments. So that's basically what we're doing. That's the spirit of the hijab.
So a lot of people talk about what is the meaning of hijab, why do we wear it, and I think that's been covered a lot, but I kind of wanted to talk to you about what do you see biases in the Muslim community towards hijabis and non-hijabis?
Within the Muslim community?
So you see often that practicing Muslims or women wearing hijab, sometimes you see them judging women that do not wear hijab, and why do you think we see that?
Right, I think actually it goes both ways. I've had the experience both ways because I didn't start wearing the hijab until I hit about 33. So I was able to experience both sides of the fence. Now, when I was in university, I'll give you an example. I always had the passion for my Islam, but I was on a learning curve. I was going through the learning process. So I'd go to the small gatherings that we'd have during the lunch hour in the ISOCs at university, and I'd go in without the hijab because I didn't want to be seen as a hypocrite that, just by going into this little room, I'm wearing the hijab just to show these people. This is in command to God, not to show people. Mm-hmm. But I experienced the reverse, not prejudice, but these young girls actually welcomed me in. And they allowed me to take the initiative to go and research on the Hadith sciences and do a presentation during one of their meetings. So I'd say that's the positive side of it. I've had hijabis encouraging me indirectly, and I will never forget that. That was at the University of Westminster in the UK. And if those sisters ever watch this video, I really have a lot of gratitude towards them. Yes, and you will have hijabis. The rare occasion, I've never really had that experience as a non-hijabi where I've been judged by a hijabi. Maybe it's more prevalent now, but it was a very rare, experience, and I personally haven't experienced it to any extent that I'd remember. If that is the case and you are a non-hijabi out there who's had that experience, I would say two things. One is ignore it. Number two is don't let it become an excuse for you to push yourself away from Islam even further or away from the hijab even further, because that opinion or that person should not represent your Islam or what you do with this cloth, okay? Yes, in our Pakistani cultural setting, when, I've gone to weddings wearing this, I've experienced problems from within our community said, oh, why are you wearing that? You're so young. I mean, I'm not young anymore. But when I was wearing it, when I started wearing it, I had this issue where, you know, the aunties would say, you're still young, you know, take it off, look pretty, you know. So there are a lot of challenges when it comes to this, but it comes down to you. What are you submitting to, you know, and why are you wearing it?
So you talked about how when you were young and you wore the hijab, you talked about how family members would talk about how you should take it off. So why do you think family members, or we in Pakistani community or different communities, we see this pressure towards young girls who do wear the hijab to take it off?
Well, again, Islam has been hijacked by culture in many contexts. And I don't want to keep saying, you know, that the Pakistani culture, there are various cultures, there's Somali, Pakistani, Arab, there's the Western culture. We face challenges as Muslims, carrying the Muslim identity from whatever culture we are born and raised into or rub shoulders with. So why do we experience this? I don't know. It's the peer pressure that they feel. They've grown up very fashionable, going with the fashionable trends, and they feel perhaps, you know, we're missing out in our youth, you know, on something that we should be taking advantage of, which is celebrating our youth and our beauty.
Okay, so we've talked about two things so far. We've talked about how we see non-hijabis talking to hijabis, that you should take it off, you should be beautiful, you should be young. And then we talked about how sometimes there is a bias from hijabis to non-hijabis, that you should put the hijab on, you should be modest. So how do you feel about, as someone who you've experienced both sides of the coin, you've experienced being a non-hijabi young woman and you've experienced being a hijabi young woman, how do you think, or what is your opinion on people telling young Muslim women how to dress?
The bottom line is, if your relatives and friends and family are telling you to put the hijab on and to dress modestly, then to be honest, they're giving you good advice. You know, they're looking out for you. They are your real friends. They are the people who really care about you, because they're not just thinking about your life in this realm, but how your life in this realm will manifest itself in, you know, manifest in the life hereafter, right? They are your real friends. Now, if they're telling you to take it off, and, you know, a part of you thinks, okay, yes, I should be celebrating my youth, my beauty, and, you know, that's a different type of peer pressure. There are two different types of peer pressure. What you have to identify is this something that is going to be good for me in the long run? Is this going to be something that is going to be bad for me in the long run, right? So are you someone who's submitting to God and wearing this? Like the police officer's uniform, right? The police officer is submitting to the law of this country. So they dress to represent that person who is submitting to the law, enforcing the law, and wearing as a representative what that law represents. So if we are going to wear the hijab, right, how are we going to represent that? Are we going to be as committed and faithful as those police officers when we honour and respect and understand the hijab?
Well, thank you so much. You brought a different insight to hijab. Just really quickly, if we could give a message to the people watching, talk to young women, both hijabi and non-hijabi, who are struggling on their hijab, whether it is to keep it on or to take it off or to even wear it at all.
Okay, so first of all, to those who are wearing the hijab, I mean, we have to understand that the hijab is more than just a cloth on our head, right? And, you know, when we're explaining to non-Muslims what this is, we actually use that language. We say, well, it's not just a cloth. Sometimes we say it's just a cloth. I mean, to them, it's just a cloth on our head. But for us, it's more than that. It involves how we convey ourselves, how we speak, how we behave. You know, so putting on a hijab and rapping a crap video, I'm sorry, with very foul and vile language and messages, that is not representing the hijab. It would be like the police officer, who's put on the uniform, but he's hanging out with drug dealers. He's hanging out with criminals. It defeats the purpose, So we have to keep that in mind. And for those who are not wearing the hijab, don't let society or the people around you define what you believe in. Pick up the Quran, read it, understand it, connect with Allah, connect with your Creator. Understand that your youth is not always going to be there, but understand how the hijab is. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. You're covering something. God says cover your adornments, cover your beauty. God's saying that you're beautiful, but God's saying preserve it for the one you'll marry, and be at ease around the people you can't marry, such as your father, your brother, your son. So, honor and understand the respect and the dignity that this represents. And, we don't have to deal with the Me Too, #MeToo. We don't have to deal with the problems of sexual objectification. The hijab helps us. It's an aid for us. Understand that.
Well, thank you so much for being in the studio with us
Sorry for
today.
going on a bit.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you're interested in getting in contact with Dr Tabassum, click the links below. Keep sending us your questions. I'm your host, Hafsa Siddiqui for YATA Talks.